Victoria Sterling pressed her back against the cold brick wall, trying to shield herself from the morning wind that cut through her worn jacket like ice. 3 days had passed since her last proper meal, and the gnawing hunger in her stomach had become a constant companion. Her sneakers, which had seen better days months ago, barely protected her feet from the rough pavement as she wandered through the upscale downtown district. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, surrounded by gleaming office buildings and expensive cars, yet she felt more invisible than ever. People hurried past in their tailored suits and designer handbags, their eyes carefully avoiding contact with someone like her. Victoria had learned to recognize that look, or rather, the deliberate absence of one. She had become a ghost in plain sight. The discovery as Victoria bent down to retie her shoelace with trembling fingers, something caught her eye. There, partially hidden beneath a newspaper that had blown against the base of a street lamp, was a leather wallet.
Ow.
Her heart skipped as she picked it up, feeling its weight and quality. This wasn't some cheap knockoff. This was the real deal. The kind of wallet that costs more than most people made in a week. Victoria's hand shook as she opened it. The sight that greeted her made her gasp audibly. Crisp $100 bills were neatly arranged inside, more money than she had seen. In years, her empty stomach clenched, not just from hunger, but from the overwhelming temptation before her. Just one of those bills could buy her a warm meal, maybe even a cheap motel room for the night. But as her fingers touched the money, her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Honesty is the foundation of character, dear one. When you take what isn't yours, you lose a piece of yourself that you can never get back. Victoria closed her eyes, fighting back tears. Even in death, Grandmother Rose continued to guide her moral compass, the business card behind the cash. Victoria discovered a collection of credit cards and a business card that made her breath catch. Benjamin Carter, Chief Executive Officer. Carter Industries. She recognized that name immediately. Everyone in the city knew about Benjamin Carter, the self-made billionaire who had built an empire from nothing. His face had graced magazine covers and newspaper articles for years. The wallet also contained what appeared to be a family photo. A handsome man with kind eyes stood beside a beautiful woman with flowing auburn hair. Between them was a small boy, maybe 6 years old, with a man's same warm smile. Victoria studied the image, noting how the woman's hand rested protectively on the child's shoulder.
Ow.
The man's arm encircled them both. This was clearly a family that loved each other deeply. Victoria made her decision. Wallet, no matter how difficult the journey or how much her body protested, was the right thing to do, even if it meant continuing to go hungry for another day. The mansion, Gates, the address on Benjamin Carter's driver's license, led Victoria to an exclusive neighborhood she had never dared enter before. Massive homes sat behind iron gates and manicured lawns, each one more impressive than the last. When she finally reached the Carter residence, Victoria had to crane her neck to see the top of the mansion. It was like something from a fairy tale. With its stone facade and towering windows that sparkled in the afternoon sun, her worn sneakers felt out of place on the pristine sidewalk. As she approached the imposing front gate, an intercom system was mounted on a stone pillar, looking far more sophisticated than anything Victoria had ever encountered. She pressed the button with a finger that trembled from both cold and nervousness. The hostile guardian, the voice that crackled through the speaker, was sharp and unwelcoming. "State your business." Victoria cleared her throat, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I need to speak with Mr. Benjamin Carter, please. It's very important." A few moments later, a security guard appeared on the other side of the gate. He was a large man with a stern expression and clothes that probably cost more than Victoria had ever owned. His eyes swept over her appearance with obvious disdain, taking in her tangled hair, worn clothing, and generally disheveled state. "We don't do handouts here," he said dismissively. "Try the shelter on 5th Street." Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I'm not asking for charity. I have something that belongs to Mr. Carter, and I need to return it to him personally." The guard scoffed. "Story in the book? Whatever game you're playing? Take it somewhere else." People like you don't have anything that someone like Mr. Carter would want. The casual cruelty in his voice cut deep, but Victoria held her ground. She thought about the photo and the wallet, about the family that was probably worried sick about their missing father and husband. Please, just ask him to come to the gate. If he says he doesn't want to see me, I'll leave immediately. I promise. Billionaire appears. Something in Victoria's tone must have penetrated the guard's skepticism because he grudgingly agreed to check with his employer. Victoria waited by the gate, clutching the wallet against her chest like a lifeline.
Ow.
Passed before she heard footsteps approaching. Benjamin Carter was even more impressive in person than in his photos. Tall and distinguished, with silver threading through his dark hair, carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being in charge. But there was something else in his expression, something that looked like barely contained. Grief. When Victoria held out the wallet without saying a word, Benjamin's eyes widened in surprise. He took it with hands that were surprisingly gentle, quickly checking the contents. Everything was there: the money, the cards, the precious family photo. "You didn't take anything," he said, and there was genuine amazement in his voice. "It wasn't mine to take," Victoria replied simply. An unexpected invitation. Benjamin studied Victoria with new interest. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with eyes that held both pain and strength. Her clothes were shabby, her appearance unkempt, but there was something in her bearing that spoke of inner dignity. "What's your name?" he asked. "Victoria Sterling?" "And where do you live, Victoria?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Victoria could have lied, could have made up some story about an apartment across town. Instead, she chose honesty. "I don't live anywhere specific right now. I've been on the streets for about 4 months. Benjamin's expression softened. Here was a woman who had nothing, who could have easily taken his money and disappeared. Yet she had walked across the city to return what wasn't hers. "Would you like to come inside for some coffee? It's the least I can do." Victoria hesitated. She was acutely aware of how out of place she would look in his pristine home. "I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. You've done me an enormous favor, and I'd like to thank you properly." Inside the mansion, the interior of the Carter mansion was even more breathtaking than Victoria had imagined. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and priceless artwork adorned the walls. Yet despite all the luxury, there was something cold about the space, as if it were a museum rather than a home. Benjamin led her to a sitting room where he served tea and small sandwiches. Victoria tried to eat slowly, to maintain some semblance of dignity, but her hunger was too great. She devoured the food like someone who hadn't eaten in days, which was exactly the case. "Tell me about yourself," Benjamin said gently. "You end up in this situation?" Victoria's story poured out in halting sentences. She spoke of her grandmother, the woman who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident. She described watching Rose Sterling slowly succumb to cancer, using up their savings on medical bills that never seemed to end. After her grandmother's death, Victoria had struggled to keep up with rent and utilities on her minimum wage job. One missed payment led to another, and before she knew it, she was evicted with nowhere to go. "I've been looking for work," Victoria explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "But when you don't have an address or proper clothes for interviews, it becomes almost impossible. People see me coming and they've already made up their minds. The little boy's entrance is, if summoned by some invisible signal, a small figure appeared in the doorway. The boy from the wallet photo stood there in pajamas, his dark hair tousled from sleep, but the bright smile Victoria had seen in the picture was nowhere to be found. This child's eyes held a sadness that seemed far too heavy for someone so young. "Oliver," Benjamin said, his voice taking on a different quality, softer and more careful. "Come meet Ms. Victoria. She's the kind lady who found Daddy's wallet and brought it back to us." Oliver approached cautiously, staying close to his father's side. Victoria smiled at him, the first genuine smile she had felt in months. "Hello, Oliver. You have very nice pajamas. Are those rockets on them? Dada?" The boy nodded shyly, glancing down at the pattern on his sleepwear. "They're space rockets. Daddy says maybe we can visit the Space Center someday." "That sounds like an amazing adventure," Victoria said. Bet you know all about different kinds of spaceships. For the first time since entering the room, Oliver's face showed a spark of interest. I have books about them, models too. Do you want to see? Before Benjamin could intervene, Oliver had taken Victoria's hand and was leading her toward his playroom. The space was every child's dream, filled with toys, books, and educational materials that probably cost more than most families spent in a year. But Victoria noticed that despite the abundance, many of the toys looked untouched, as if Oliver played alone more often than not. "This is my favorite," Oliver said, showing her a detailed model of the International Space Station. "Mommy helped me build it before she went to heaven." Victoria's heart clenched at the casual way he mentioned his mother's death. She knelt down to Oliver's level, examining the model with genuine interest. "Your mommy must have been very smart to help you with something this complicated, and very patient, too." "She was," Oliver said solemnly. "Daddy says she's watching us from the stars now, but sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like." Without thinking, Victoria reached out and gently touched Oliver's shoulder. "You know what I think? I think when someone loves us that much, their voice never really goes away. It just gets quieter sometimes, so we have to listen extra carefully." Oliver looked up at her with eyes that seemed older than his years. "Do you think she can still hear me when I talk to her?" "I'm absolutely certain of it," Victoria said firmly. "Love doesn't disappear just because someone goes to heaven. It stays right here." She placed her hand over her heart, and here. She touched Oliver's chest gently, forever and always. Benjamin's realization from the doorway. Benjamin watched this interaction with growing amazement. In the 2 years since his wife Emily's death, Oliver had barely spoken to the parade of nannies and caregivers they had hired. He had retreated into himself, going through the motions of childhood without any real joy or engagement. Therapists, child psychologists, and specialists had all tried to break through his walls, but nothing had worked. Yet here was this stranger, this homeless woman who had stumbled into their lives by chance, and she had Oliver talking about his mother without tears, sharing his toys without being prompted. There was something almost magical about the way she interacted with his son, as if she instinctively understood exactly what he needed. An offer of hope when they returned to the sitting room. Benjamin had made a decision that surprised even himself. "Victoria, I have a proposition for you. My son hasn't been the same since he lost his mother. Struggled to connect with anyone, to find joy in the things he used to love. But I just watched him open up to you in a way he hasn't with anyone else in 2 years?" Victoria looked between father and son, sensing the weight of unspoken grief that hung over both of them. "It's a wonderful boy. He just needs time to heal. What if I offered you a job?" Benjamin continued. "As Oliver's companion and caregiver, you would have your own room, full board, a good salary, and the chance to help a little boy who desperately needs someone who understands how to listen without trying to fix everything." The offer was so unexpected, so life-changing, that Victoria felt dizzy. "Mr. Carter, I don't have any formal training. I've never been a nanny or a caregiver professionally. But you have something more valuable than training," Benjamin replied. "You have empathy, patience, and the ability to see past someone's pain to the person underneath. That's exactly what Oliver needs right now." Victoria looked at Oliver, who was watching her with hopeful eyes. In that moment, she realized that returning the wallet hadn't just been about doing the right thing. It had been about finding her way to exactly where she was meant to be. "I accept," she said, her voice strong despite the tears threatening to fall. "I would be honored to help take care of Oliver." As Benjamin shook her hand to seal the agreement, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. She had walked into this mansion as a stranger returning a lost item, but she was about to become part of something much bigger. A family that needed healing, and perhaps, just perhaps, she was exactly the person to help them find their way back to happiness. The first part of Victoria Sterling's incredible journey was complete, but her real adventure was just beginning. Victoria's first morning in the Carter mansion felt surreal. She woke up in a bed softer than any cloud, surrounded by walls that didn't shake with the wind or leak when it rained. For the first time in months, she had slept through the entire night without fear. Without cold, without the gnawing emptiness of hunger. Mrs. Henderson, the kindly housekeeper, had prepared a wardrobe of simple but clean clothes for Victoria. "Mr. Carter asked me to make sure you had everything you needed," she explained with a warm smile. "I also mentioned that Oliver has been asking about you since he woke up." Victoria found Oliver in the breakfast room, still in his rocket pajamas, pushing scrambled eggs around his plate without much enthusiasm. When he saw her, his face lit up with the first genuine smile she had witnessed from him. "Victoria, Daddy said you're going to stay with us now. Is that really true?" "It's really true," Victoria confirmed, sitting down beside him. "I hope that's okay with you." Oliver nodded eagerly. "Can we work on a new rocket model today? One that's even bigger than the space station." "I would love that," Victoria said, and she meant it. There was something about this little boy's enthusiasm that awakened a part of her I thought had been lost forever. The walls come down over the following weeks. Victoria watched Oliver slowly emerge from the shell of grief he had built around himself. It started with small things, humming while he played with his toys, asking questions about the stories she read to him, even laughing at her silly voices when she brought characters to life. Victoria had a gift for making ordinary moments feel magical. A simple walk in the garden became an expedition to discover new planets. Building blocks transformed into entire cities where they were the heroes protecting innocent people. Even bath time became an adventure with toy boats navigating treacherous soap bubble seas. "How do you do it?" Benjamin asked. One evening after watching Victoria help Oliver with his homework, the boy was actually giggling as he practiced his addition, something Benjamin hadn't heard in years. "I remember what it felt like to be alone," Victoria answered simply. "When my grandmother was sick, I felt scared and confused most of the time. I wished someone would just sit with me and make me feel like everything would be okay, even when it wasn't." Benjamin studied her face in the lamplight. "You're healing him." "He's healing me too," Victoria admitted. "I forgot what it felt like. To be needed, to have purpose. Oliver reminds me that there's still good in the world." Growing closer as autumn painted the mansion's gardens in brilliant colors, something beautiful began to bloom between Victoria and Benjamin. It started with shared glances across the dinner table, moments when their eyes would meet while watching Oliver play. Victoria would catch Benjamin staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, and he would quickly look away, a slight blush coloring his cheeks. Their conversations grew longer and more personal. After Oliver went to bed, they would find themselves lingering in the living room, talking about everything and nothing. Victoria learned about Benjamin's childhood in a small farming town, how he had built his business empire through sheer determination. And countless 18-hour days, Benjamin discovered Victoria's love of poetry, her dream of one day teaching children, and the profound loneliness she had carried since her grandmother's death. "I haven't felt this comfortable talking to anyone in years," Benjamin confessed one rainy evening as they sat by the fireplace. "After Emily died, I thought I was done with feeling anything beyond obligation to Oliver and my work." Victoria curled deeper into the oversized armchair, pulling a soft blanket around her shoulders. Grief has a way of convincing us that happiness is betrayal, that moving forward means forgetting the people we've lost. "Is that what you think? That I'm betraying Emily's memory by caring about you?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Victoria met his gaze steadily. "I think Emily would want you and Oliver to be happy. I think she would want you to love again, to laugh again, to remember that life is meant to be lived." Oliver's matchmaking children have an uncanny ability to see what adults try to hide from themselves. Oliver had been watching the growing connection between his father and Victoria with the keen observation skills of a 6-year-old. One morning, he presented Victoria with a drawing that made her heart skip. "It's our family," he announced proudly, showing her a crayon masterpiece featuring 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. "It's Daddy, that's me, and that's you. See? You're wearing the pretty blue dress like princesses wear." Victoria knelt down to Oliver's level, studying the drawing carefully. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. But you know I'm not actually part of your family, right? I'm just someone who helps take care of you." Oliver's face scrunched up in confusion. "But families are people who love each other and live together and take care of each other. That's us, isn't it?" From the doorway, Benjamin cleared his throat softly. "Oliver, why don't you go wash your hands for lunch?" Victoria and I need to talk. After the boy scampered away, Benjamin approached Victoria slowly. He's not wrong, about what families are. Victoria felt her pulse quickened. Benjamin, we should be careful about what we say around him. He's already lost one mother figure. I don't want him to get attached to an idea that might not be realistic. What if it is realistic? Closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. What if this isn't just about Oliver anymore? What if I told you that I've fallen in love with you? The declaration Victoria's breath caught in her throat. She had sensed the growing attraction between them. Had felt her own feelings deepening day by day. But hearing the words spoken aloud made everything real and terrifying. Benjamin, you don't understand what you're saying. I'm nobody. I was homeless. Just a few months ago. I have no education, no family, no prospects, beyond what you've given me out of kindness. People in your world don't fall in love with people in mine? Benjamin reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. Victoria Sterling, you are the strongest, most compassionate, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You brought my son back to life. You brought me back to life. I don't care about your past or what other people might think. I only care about how I feel when I'm with you, how right this all seems. Began to fall down Victoria's cheeks. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I, Benjamin admitted. I never thought I would love anyone again after Emily. But love isn't something we choose, is it? It just happens, like sunrise or rain or miracles. He leaned forward and kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, Victoria saw her future reflected in his eyes. And for the first time since her grandmother's death, she felt truly home. The proposal Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, with fresh snow covering the mansion's grounds like a pristine white blanket. Oliver bounced into the living room at dawn, dragging Victoria and Benjamin from their beds to see what Santa had brought. The tree was surrounded by carefully wrapped presents, but Oliver seemed more interested in making sure Victoria opened her gifts than in his own toys. This one's for me and Daddy together, he announced, handing her a small velvet box with shaking hands. Victoria's heart stopped as she recognized the shape and size of the box. She looked up at Benjamin, who was watching her with nervous anticipation, then back at Oliver, whose face was glowing with excitement. Open it, open it, Oliver urged, with trembling fingers. Victoria lifted the lid to reveal a stunning diamond ring, classic and elegant and perfect. Benjamin dropped to one knee beside the Christmas tree, taking her free hand in both of his. Victoria Sterling, 6 months ago, you walked into our lives carrying nothing but honesty and kindness. You've given us back our joy, our laughter, our hope for the future. I can't imagine spending another day without you beside me. Will you marry me? Will you be Oliver's mother and my wife and the heart of our family? Through her tears, Victoria could barely speak. Yes, she managed to whisper, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. Oliver cheered and threw himself into their group embrace as Benjamin slipped the ring onto Victoria's finger. They stayed there, wrapped in each other's arms under the Christmas tree. 3 people who had found their way to exactly where they belonged. Spring brought new life to the Carter Mansion gardens. And with it, plans for a wedding that would celebrate not just the union of 2 hearts, but the creation of a family born from love rather than blood. Victoria insisted on a simple ceremony, despite Benjamin's offers to arrange something grand and elaborate. I want it to be about us, she explained as they walked through the garden choosing flowers, about our love, our commitment, our family. I don't need hundreds of guests or designer gowns. I just need you and Oliver and the promise of forever. The wedding was held in the mansion's rose garden on a perfect May afternoon. Victoria wore a flowing ivory dress that made her look like a fairy tale princess, with wildflowers woven through her hair. Oliver served as ring bearer, wearing a miniature tuxedo and the biggest smile anyone had ever seen. Benjamin's voice shook with emotion as he recited his vows. Victoria, you taught me that love doesn't diminish when it's shared, it multiplies. You showed me that healing is possible, that happiness can bloom again, even in the darkest soil. I promise to love you fiercely, protect you always, and never take for granted the miracle of your presence in our lives. Victoria's own vows brought tears to every eye present. Benjamin, you saw worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. You gave me not just a home, but a purpose, a family, a future full of possibilities. Oliver, my sweet boy, you taught me that love at first sight isn't just for fairy tales. I promised to be your mother in every way that matters, to love you, as fiercely as if I had carried you myself. When they kissed as husband and wife, Oliver cheered so loudly that the whole garden erupted in laughter. Building a life together, the months following their wedding were filled with the sweet chaos of learning to be a family. Victoria legally adopted Oliver, giving him her new last name and her whole heart. They established new traditions: pancake breakfasts on Sunday mornings, family movie nights with elaborate blanket forts, and bedtime stories that grew more ridiculous. With each telling, Victoria enrolled in college courses, pursuing the education she had always dreamed of. Benjamin supported her studies completely, often finding her curled up with textbooks after Oliver went to bed, determination written across her face. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, he reminded her one evening, massaging her shoulders. As she studied for an exam, I'm not doing this for anyone else, Victoria replied. I'm doing it for me, and for the little girl who used to dream of being a teacher someday. She deserves to see those dreams come true. Benjamin's love for her only deepened as he watched her embrace every opportunity with the hunger of someone who had learned never to take anything for granted. Expanding the family 2 years after their wedding, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. The news filled their home with a joy so bright it seemed to illuminate every corner of the mansion. Oliver was beyond excited at the prospect of becoming a big brother. I'm going to teach the baby everything, he declared solemnly, about rockets and planets and how to build the best pillow forts. And I'll protect them from monsters and bullies and vegetables they don't like. Victoria's pregnancy was smooth and happy, filled with Benjamin's careful attention and Oliver's constant chatter directed at her growing belly. They prepared the nursery together, painting walls in soft yellow and hanging mobiles of stars and moons. On a crisp October morning, little Grace Elizabeth Carter made her entrance into the world, tiny and perfect and deeply loved. Oliver held his baby sister with the reverence of someone handling precious treasure, his eyes wide with wonder. She's so small, he whispered, but she's perfect, just like our family. The full circle 5 years after Victoria had found that wallet on a downtown street. She stood in the same spot with Grace toddling beside her and Oliver helping Benjamin lock up their car. They were visiting the children's shelter where Victoria now volunteered, reading stories and serving meals to kids who reminded her of her former self. Mama, why are those kids sad? Grace asked, tugging on Victoria's coat. They don't have homes right now, sweetheart, Victoria explained gently. But there are good people working hard to help them find families who will love them. Like Daddy found you, Oliver chimed in. He was 9 now, tall for his age and wise beyond his years. Actually, Victoria said, smiling at her husband, think I found Daddy. Sometimes the best things happen when we're just trying to do the right thing. Inside the shelter, Victoria read stories with the same passion and warmth she had always brought to Oliver's bedtime routine. Benjamin watched her with pride as she made children laugh who had forgotten how, as she offered comfort to kids who had lost hope. Later, as they walked back to their car, Benjamin slipped his arm around Victoria's waist. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had kept the wallet that day? Victoria considered the question seriously. I think about it sometimes. I probably could have gotten by for a few more weeks, maybe found a job eventually, but I would have missed this. I would have missed you, missed Oliver, missed Grace, missed becoming the person I was meant to be. I love you, Mrs. Carter, Benjamin said, using the name that still made Victoria's heart flutter. I love you too, Mr. Carter. All of you, always. On quiet evenings, when Grace was tucked into her crib and Oliver was dreaming of spaceships, Victoria and Benjamin would sit on their porch and marvel at the life they had built together. The homeless woman who had once slept in doorways was now a college graduate, a devoted mother, and a pillar of her community. The grieving widower who had forgotten how to smile was now a man who laughed every day, who loved deeply, who had learned that hearts can hold infinite amounts of love without ever feeling crowded. "Do you think Oliver will remember?" Victoria asked one night, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Sad he was before. How lost we all were. "I think he'll remember that love saved us," Benjamin replied. "That sometimes the most important moments of our lives come disguised as ordinary days. That doing the right thing, even when it's hard, can change everything." Victoria rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his hand in hers. "I used to think I was unlucky," she admitted. "Losing my parents so young, watching my grandmother die, ending up on the streets. But now I think all of those things were just preparing me for this moment, for this life, for this love." "Maybe that's what love is," Benjamin mused. "Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something so powerful that it transforms even our worst moments into stepping stones toward joy." Inside the house, Oliver called out from his bedroom, "Mom, Dad, come see the shooting star." They rushed inside to find him at his window, pointing excitedly at a streak of light across the dark sky. Grace had somehow climbed out of her crib and was clapping her hands at the pretty light. The four of them stood together at the window, making wishes on that falling star. Victoria's wish was simple, that this moment would last forever, that love would continue to multiply and spread and transform lives the way it had transformed theirs. As the star faded from view, she knew with absolute certainty that some wishes do come true. The wallet that had changed everything now sat in a frame on Benjamin's office wall, a reminder that miracles often come disguised as ordinary acts of honesty. Below it was a photo from their wedding day, 4 faces glowing with happiness, and beneath that, Oliver's first drawing of their family, still crooked and perfect in its childish simplicity. Sometimes visitors would ask about the framed wallet, curious about its significance. Benjamin would smile and tell them it was a reminder that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold, only given freely from one heart to another. And Victoria would add that sometimes getting lost is the only way to find where you truly belong. Their love story had begun with a simple choice to do what was right. And it continued every day with the choice to love deeply, forgive quickly, and believe in the power of second chances. In a world that often felt dark and hopeless, the Carter family stood as proof that love really could conquer all, that families could be built from kindness rather than just blood, and that every ending was really just a new beginning in disguise.